Hi, welcome to the Dairy Hour podcast, where rural charm meets personal growth. Join us as we milk every moment for wisdom, self-improvement, and mental wellness. I'm your host, Val Lavigne, a rural dairy farming mom with a passion for filling hearts while never forgetting to fill my own cup. Get ready for insightful conversations, empowering tips, and a splash of fun and laughs, of course. Let's cultivate growth, nourish our minds, and embrace the journey together. This is the Dairy Hour podcast, where every episode is a breath of fresh air and the inspiration you need to be your best self. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Dairy Hour podcast. I am really excited to announce our special guest for the day, Tara Vander Dussen, and you probably recognize her on social media, and she also used to be known as the New Mexico Milkmaid. And a little fun fact about her, she is actually the first spouse of a previous guest that we've had on this podcast. So Tara, how are you today?
Hi, thanks for having me on. I'm so excited. I don't know if I'll do a good job following Daniel, but I will try to bring good content to the podcast today.
And he was worried about making you proud when I interviewed him. So I think you're both just fine and going to do just wonderful things. And I just love, like, now that I've gotten to chat with Daniel and I've gotten to chat with you a few different times over the past year or so, it is just funny because you guys are two peas in a pod, and I think couple goals, and you'd be a very fun couple to hang out with. So at some point we definitely have to make that happen.
I would love that. I know. I feel like maybe one of these days, you and I are on a board together. Maybe one of these days it'll work out where we can bring along our spouses and grab a drink after the board meeting or something fun.
Someday we will make this happen.
Yes.
Kids and all. Just juggle it all around. So,
right.
Tara, do you want to start by just letting everyone know, what your day-to-day looks like?
Yeah. So, a little bit of background. If you don't follow me on Instagram, or other places, I grew up on a dairy farm in New Mexico and ultimately, married my husband, who is also a dairy farmer. And now we dairy farm with him and his family. He has multiple brothers. He's one of 6 boys. So we all dairy here in New Mexico together. I actually got my degree in environmental science. And so that was kind of, I didn't see myself coming back to dairy, which is a whole nother story, but got my degree in environmental science and worked as an environmental consultant for about a decade. And then found myself sharing on social media and ended up, that has evolved and changed into the fact that now, I guess, I'm a co-host of a podcast called Discover Ag. That's essentially my full-time job now, is that role of, being a podcast host, talking about agriculture and, just sharing with people authentically about agriculture and dairy farming through our podcast.
Awesome. Yes, I'm a huge listener of the podcast, and I enjoy the just breaking down current things that are happening in the food space and just getting those digestible bites. And, it's like you're having a conversation with you guys when I'm listening in the car. So it's always fun.
Thank you. Thanks for listening. I appreciate that.
Of course. I've listened since the very beginning. So it's been neat to see the evolution of your podcast and how it's grown and changed over the last few years. So
yeah, I skipped over a lot of things when I said I went from sharing on social media to now, co-host of Discover Ag podcast. But yes, I have had a few different, journeys and paths and things that have taken me in different places, but I really love where I've ended up and just really enjoying this space that I'm in now.
Good. I'm enjoying it too. I enjoy being part of the disco clan. So we're going to go with that. So the fun part about today is we're not going to chat about something that you're normally chatting about. We are going to dive into being a busy rural mom. And you have recently embraced the journey of homeschooling, which is really awesome for your 2 girls. And so I guess that's kind of what I want to preface the conversation today around. And we'll see how the conversation progresses. So let's start. Oh, go ahead.
I am so excited for this conversation, actually, because I have done very little talking about this online. I mean, I've mentioned that I homeschool online, but I have not deep dived it at all. I don't know that I share totally what our day-to-day looks like. So I'm excited, while also maybe a little bit nervous to just get into it and kind of share. So really looking forward to it.
This is a judgment-free zone. So if you want to judge anybody, now's your time. Just don't bother listening. So we don't judge around here. So what did inspire you to start homeschooling your children, especially just considering, you are busy, you travel a ton for speaking, and like you mentioned earlier, we're on a board together. So do you want to kind of dive into that a little bit?
Yeah. So I feel like maybe at the beginning of like having kids, if you would ask me when I first had kids if I'd homeschool, I probably would have like laughed in your face. Like I would have been like, no, I will never homeschool. Like that is not going to be for me. Like I very much, I've had a career since, before my kids were born, continued that all the way through. I think I took like a 6 week maternity leave, right? Like I've always worked and I've always needed like childcare or, help. And so like having my kids go to school in my mind was always kind of like the pie in the sky. Like one day they will go to school 5 days a week and I won't have to figure out, not that I didn't love them home with me, but like the realities are I had to figure out who was watching them what days. And like we all know childcare is extremely difficult and it's not made any easier in like rural communities.
Mhm.
I had always been fortunate that, I had found really good help to help me with the kids. And then I've also always like relied on my mom to, fill in for those days that I didn't have anyone and just like going above and beyond there. And so I was always blessed that way. I feel like though maybe all of us got, I don't know, an awakening of like homeschooling during COVID. And I still, though, at that time didn't, New Mexico was very much shut down, but my kids went to a really small private school. And so they technically were still in school, had the mask, had the social distancing, had, the plexiglass things all around them, and continued going to school. And then I feel like, though, but maybe like a seed was planted at that time of kind of thinking about it. And then, I mean, that has been, however many years ago, 3 years, we're at 4 years now. That's kind of like crazy
Yeah.
to say. Yeah, that's insane. But I feel like that seed continued to like kind of grow and sprout and started conversations with my husband. And I think we can get into this, but I think even like just the lifestyle I live a little bit. You talk about how much I travel. A lot of times my kids were little, I traveled with my kids and my mom would come along. And so I feel like I was starting to see how school was not maybe fitting into our life, which may be backwards for a lot of people. Like a lot of people maybe adjust their lives to around kids' school. And I don't know that I was totally willing to do that. And so, ultimately last fall, we decided to make the decision to start homeschooling. And so I'm very new at it. So I have still lots to learn, but I'm happy to share what, the last, school year has looked like for me as we have transitioned from traditional school setting to homeschooling.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why you were so attractive for fitting this role of someone to talk about homeschooling on this podcast, just because you're in the thick of it. It's not like you're like, oh, I'm a stay-at-home mom. I've been doing this for, 8 years. It's just neat to see someone actually doing it. Like, I've decided that this is not right. I'm going to homeschool. This is where we're at. This is how I made it work. And I think that that story is just very intriguing. So, do you want to walk us through like a typical day in the life when you're home and then maybe also when you're traveling, how you do that?
Yeah, absolutely. I will say a few other, like one other side note. My youngest daughter has a genetic condition, which we've shared about online, that's neurofibromatosis. And so we do doctor's appointments fairly regularly with her that take her, out of school. There's just things in her life. That was another, I would say, thing for me that was big, that was like, maybe homeschooling would just fit our family like dynamic a little bit better. So I wanted to mention that and I didn't. So just a side note on that. But as far as what our week kind of looks like, I actually decided to co-homeschool with my mom. I originally set out looking for a tutor and we searched high and low and could not find someone that fit like what we were looking for. Essentially, 2 days a week, I wanted to have someone that homeschooled them and that I worked on those days. And ultimately, at the same time, I feel like my mom was, I don't know if she was looking, I don't want to say she was looking for something to do, but she was like ready to take on something. And so I talked with her. So I do pay her every month to tutor my girls essentially, but she does 2 days a week. So I'll give you a breakdown of our week. So typically Mondays and Wednesdays are my homeschool days and Tuesdays and Thursdays are her homeschool days. And so my day looks a little different than hers. My kids say they like her day better. Like,
They'll
thanks a
always
lot,
say
mom.
that, mom.
Yes, totally. So on Mondays and Wednesdays, it's pretty much the same though. We wake up, I would say we start about 8:30. Sometimes we've done some reading beforehand. Like if, they've climbed into bed with me, I shared this actually on the podcast today on Discover Ag. We'll do some reading and things like that, just like low key, but we typically start quote unquote like school work at 8:30. And we try to start with the like fundamentals of math and language arts first, broken up in between those two with a walk. Usually like I try to get them outside for 20 to 30 minutes walking around the dairy or whatever it is we're going to do. Then both of those are done in the morning. We have lunch. And then in the afternoon, we roll into like our, I don't want to say extracurriculars, but, more like the history and the science. We usually end the day with science because it ends up with, some kind of experiment or something we're working on or that we're doing. And then they are enrolled in some extracurricular activities, which I've taken very seriously since homeschooling. So I have no musical skills at all, not one bit. So they are enrolled in piano one day a week. And that's been really important to me. I told them like, ballet and gymnastics can come and go, or you could decide to give that up and decide you like something else, but you have to have a musical instrument and it's not going to be me teaching it to you. So that is one thing. And then on Tuesdays and Thursdays, my mom has them one day a week. They go to the library and they check out all their books for the week. We do a ton of reading. I will say that we read a lot in our household. And then she goes through math, language arts, and then one of the extra. So whether it's science or they do a craft with her or they do history, they do one of those others with her. And the program we picked is I actually found a lady, actually, she's a ranch lady who helps you pick curriculum. And I told her what I was looking for, what I wanted. And we found a curriculum. This curriculum is set up on the 4-day-a-week schedule, which is amazing because Friday then is my optional day. We did not get through enough math. We did not make it through science. So it is our like wrap up day. Or if, we've gone to a doctor's appointment on Monday, then Friday is a regular day. It gives us like a buffer day throughout the week that if things just didn't go according to plan or life got in the way, we have this extra day that we fill in with.
Which
Friday.
We all know being a mom, things never go to plan, especially when there's
totally
farms and kids and just anything else involved. Yes, things never go to plan. So that's really neat that you have a backup plan or basically a backup catch up day, whatever you want to call it. That's really smart and something that I guess I've never, contemplating homeschooling my kids for their entire lives. I've always thought about it, and that's something that I never thought of, which is really fantastic. Do you mind shouting out who helped you with your curriculum?
Let me
Names
look.
escaping. No, you're good.
I know. It's in my emails. I need to find it. I know her on social media. It's not terrible that I know her handle. And
well, what's her handle? And then people can find her there as well. So that
I'll give her real. It is Jessica Anderson. So it's Ranch
okay.
School. So you can find her
Okay.
Ranch School. If you guys have questions, you guys can DM me and I will connect you with her. But I found it really helpful because I really laid out exactly what I was looking for. And a lot of our schools, our rural schools, are 4 days a week here in New Mexico. And so I feel like for me, yeah. And so I just think I always had that in my mind that it's possible to do 4 days a week and like still get all the way through, your lessons and everything that needs to be done. And I have really liked that. And I know that it is such a blessing to have my mom, but I think if I didn't have my mom, I would have honestly tried to find another working mom that wanted to homeschool and try to switch. Like, I think that was like where I was headed next. If my mom had said no, is there has to be another mom who's like me, who wants to homeschool, but needs to work at least 2 days a week. Right. Like I have to. And I will say my job at this point in time is not, a traditional like ag or dairy job. Like I am doing obviously, a lot of things more with Discover Ag, and that kind of thing. But I need those 2 full days to get my work done. And then I fill in with other things. There is lots of times that when the girls get done homeschooling, typically by 2:30 in the afternoon, they know from 2:30 till dad gets home, like, don't come into mom's office. She's trying to like hustle out a few more hours, and get a few more things done. And then even last night, like after dinner, I told my husband, we had homeschooled all day yesterday. I was like, I've got to get some things done prepping for tomorrow. And so I spent 2 hours working last night from, 7 until 9. So it's not a perfect world either where I'm like, oh, I fit everything perfectly into Tuesday and Thursday and magically it's all done. Like sometimes it's a little chaotic. And I will say having the support of my husband, of the girls too, that they know like I'm sacrificing, I'm making sacrifices to be home and homeschool. Like it's everyone has to work together in our family unit to make this work. And I will say they both, my youngest sometimes will say she wants to go back to school, but my oldest has no desire to go back to school. And so she's aware that like this is what we have to do to make this work for all of us. And all of us get to have kind of, what we want and what our expectations of like family life look like.
Definitely. Um, I just love that it is nice that you're all in it as a family. Was Daniel supportive right from the get-go, or was he at first kind of skeptical, just knowing all of the different things that you do, or how did that conversation go?
Yeah. So he got on board pretty quickly. Like it was definitely not just me like solo out here being like it. I would say I probably was the one. I'm trying to even remember now. Like I think I was the one that kind of was like, I've been thinking about this, like genuinely thinking. But I think he saw really quickly just how school was not like vibing with our life. Like I remember tracking one week how many hours a week I spent driving to the girls' school, driving home, waiting like the 15 minutes because they had different pickup times and they had different drop off times. And I was like, I am spending like almost 2 hours a day just in my car picking up the kids. And, I think one of the things with agriculture is, you live at your job, right? Like my husband came in this morning. He's probably downstairs right now. Like they're home a lot, and he liked the idea of like it being like summer where the girls were home when he was here and us just like interacting. Like I think one we liked that idea. And so one thing about homeschooling now is we become such a family unit. Like the four of us spend so much time together. And there's afternoons where maybe I do need to work and they are able to go out with Daniel on the dairy and experience different things and see what he's doing. And they went to our heifer ranch just the other day with Daniel and spent an entire day, talking about it. And I did hint at him like make sure there's some learning happening, don't just bring her along for the ride. And I will say that's one thing with homeschooling is it is a lifestyle that you do try to embrace learning in every aspect. Like it is
Mhm.
not, school is no longer from us from 8 to 3. It is every time of day. If there's something we can be teaching them that we can add to whatever we're doing, we try to do that. And so because there are times that I'm like, did we really do enough school today? And I have to remind myself, no, but we did something yesterday on Sunday. We, like there's other ways to incorporate school into your life than just like, I think you have to almost like unschool yourself as a parent. Like there's other ways that school can look and learning can look than just sitting down at a desk for 8 hours.
Agreed. It's definitely, you have to look at it from a fresh perspective and maybe look at it even as an outsider to see how it would fit in with how your schedule and your things need to go. But that is really neat that you get to basically have that family time. And I'm sure that it is really nice for the girls to get to go to the farm more often. They're not just exhausting themselves at school for the day and then they come home and they don't want to do anything because they're tired. I mean, I know that my kids come home from school and they're just exhausted from just all of the things all the time, go, 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 just overstimulated. Getting that, you know, more calm environment, I feel like would be so beneficial.
I agree. I feel like our lives overall are a little bit less chaotic now. Like we just are at home a lot more. Like it's not wake up, we've got to go, we have to leave. And listen, it's not all puppy dogs and rainbows, especially the
No,
first semester. There was a lot of yelling, I felt like on my part, and I have had to teach myself how to homeschool better and how we work together better. I think one of the challenging things for me and my kids was, especially the first semester, was there was very much the attitude like we're home, so that means we don't really have to do anything or we can do it whenever we want. And maybe some of this has been even like my working is I'm like, no, we do have to do this now because I do actually need to go to work. I need to go check emails by 3 o'clock and so there is some time constraints. And so they have had to learn like it is a school day, even though you are at home. Like you do not get to just
yeah,
go play outside and like that's not homeschool. And so that was an adjustment period because you take these kids from when they're home, it means it's playtime
yeah,
to now you're home, but it means we still have to get things done and we have to be, sit down. And it's an age thing too. I'm homeschooling third grade and kindergarten, and my kindergartner, is just like bouncing and up and down and like, and I do remind myself when we were in kindergarten, I went 3 days a week, right? Like
yeah.
I feel like nowadays we expect a lot of kids at a really young age, and that was one of the things I didn't like about school. And so I do remind myself, what were some of the things that you were unhappy with the school? Don't try to replicate them at home. Like make it your own and figure out how it works. Obviously, my third grader, I'm like, you're in third grade, that's we've got to buckle down and we're doing a little bit more work.
Yep.
Um, And so it was, I will say, it's not all puppy dogs and rainbows. There's lots of really hard days. There's times where my kindergartner is off playing and my third grader's like, that's not fair, like she
Oh
gets
yes.
to play, and like
Yep.
finding that balance. But I will say, I can already see how every semester could get better. Like this semester has gone 100 times better than last semester, and we're already preparing for like how we're gonna which we could actually get into this, of what we're gonna do, when we finish this quote unquote semester, what it's gonna look like next.
Yeah, definitely. So it is funny though, my son is kindergarten aged now, and my twin daughters are also third grade. So it is funny
Oh
that our
yes,
kids are exactly the
right
same
on track.
ages. So it
Yeah.
works perfectly. But I completely know what you mean about the third grade. You need to buckle down. You have to do this. But the kindergartner, well, he's a kindergartner, so he does what kindergartners do. And yeah, that's not fair. How come I don't get to do that? Well, you got to do that, but back when you
Yes.
were in kindergarten, now you're an older kid and you need to be more responsible. Or you need to clean your room. Well, how come he doesn't have to clean his room? Well, his room is cleaner than yours, and you're also, 8.5 and he just turned 6. Like there's a big difference
Big
there. A
difference.
lot of growing. So I
Yes.
get that. So yeah, one of the things that I just is really grinding my gears about school right now is there is so much screen time. Like they're on those darn Chromebooks all the time. One of my daughters has recently started complaining about headaches when she's on the Chromebooks too much. And it just drives me crazy. Like they're not practicing their handwriting. They're not getting better at it. Like I don't care how much technology we get in our life. You still have to be able to write and have people be able to read your writing. Like that's important.
That's so interesting you brought that up, because I didn't even touch on that, but I agree. There was actually, I feel like that's one of the ways my husband got on board, is my husband was like, if they're in front of a TV that much, or screen TV, whatever,
Yeah.
a computer that much, like then they can be on that here at our house and be, then going outside and having more recess time. And that did really irk both of us. And it was nothing against the school system. I think that's just the way things are moving
Mm-hmm.
and progressing, is that they're in front of a screen. And listen, my job is fully online. I understand the value of technology, like as well as anyone else. Like the fact
Mm-hmm.
that I left my job as an environmental consultant to share on an app on our phone, like it's not lost on me, of like how much further our world will continue to progress. But I feel like there's like a balance there. Absolutely. And so that was kind of, a thing for us that we talked about, that my husband was like, well, then we could set them up in front of a computer. That has absolutely not happened. We use very little technology in our homeschooling. But also some conversations about how little time they get outside. My youngest daughter had to do an evaluation recently with her genetic condition, and the lady, the psychiatrist, asked, like, do you think she's hyperactive? And I was like, oh no, like not really. Like she sits down and does stuff. And I recently read through her notes just last week, and it had a comment of like, she's very busy. And I'm like, at the time she was 6. I'm like,
Yeah.
I hope she's busy. She's 6. And it made me
That's what
really
they
like,
do.
I wonder if she was sitting in a classroom for 8 hours, I think she would really, really struggle. But honestly, at home, like I have never been like, oh, she's hyperactive, because
Yeah.
she spends so much time outside doing other things. And I just think we live in a different world than we grew up in now. Like I remember having like 2 recesses, a morning and an afternoon, and a lunch recess. And now, like, I would ask Guinevere when she'd come home from school, my oldest, like, how long did you spend outside? And it just wasn't a lot of time that they were getting to be doing just like kid things. And I think especially leading up to third grade, there's a lot of really important things that can be learned just outside playing, and using your hands and working and building things, and just being like active versus like sitting at a desk. And so that was something both my husband and I really, really struggled with, was the lack of outside time and the amount of screen time for
Mm-hmm.
very young. I mean, we're not talking, my kids are not in junior high. They're not in high school.
Yeah.
They were, second grade. And so that was something that I did definitely struggle with.
Yeah, I get what you mean as far as like the moving around and stuff. All three of my kids, they're not like diagnosed ADD, hyperactive,
Right.
whatever. They all struggle to sit still, but they're like, they grew up on a farm. They have two parents that don't like that just go, go, go all the time. Like we both need to keep our bodies moving. Like it's just comes with the territory. And yeah, they just don't want to sit there. They don't pay attention, or they're paying attention to too many things at once. And I I mean, I just get that, but it's so hard to see them go and struggle in school when they're so smart, but it's just the environment is just doesn't necessarily seem like it's overly lending to those bodies that want to be moving. I get
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. And you asked about my husband being on board. I would say, or what his thoughts were. I would say while we agreed on all those things, he was obviously concerned about my schedule. And I have had the things I felt that this was important enough that I have given up and changed a lot of what my schedule looks like. I do not travel as much for speaking engagements. I do it, and my mom will fill in, but she has other commitments on the other days of the week, so it's not it's just not a sit down classroom on those
Mhm.
days. And so I've cut back on things. I was on more boards and had given up boards that I was on. You and I are on the DMI board together, and I very much enjoy that and committed to that. But it was time for me to let go of some other boards.
Yep.
But ultimately, I felt like, though, I don't know, the sacrifices for me really outweighed like what I have given up and what I've transitioned away from to make time for this has been really great. And I'm lucky that my co-host, Natalie Kvorik, has been really understanding that, like, Mondays and Wednesdays are my days and I'm pretty out of pocket for her. And we've just had to make that work with our business. But it definitely came down to me. I had to make changes in my life in order to make time for this for sure. And so I don't want that to be, I guess, like not noted, because I feel like sometimes online you can see things and be like, everyone's doing it all and I'm not doing enough. And it's like, you don't see the inner workings of like,
Hmm.
this was important to us. So that meant something else had to give in our lives. And for me, that was some of the things that I was involved in.
Yeah. Instagram, Facebook, it's a highlight reel, and people
Yeah.
definitely need to sit back and remember that that is the highlight reel. And, scheduling posts is a thing. Like you can you can technically post whenever. You can be completely like out of service, whatever, and you can still post, but people just see that as like, oh, they're always doing that, or oh, they're always doing that, but they're not seeing the behind the scenes, which is the most important part.
Yeah, another big piece for us that we've kind of decided to do is we are essentially going to roll into year-round school, just because of how often that we, I don't want to say take off, but if I'm traveling, like I would say the way it's working out right now is basically a little less than 1 week out of every probably 5 weeks. The girls have not like a spring break, but a break essentially.
Yeah.
That maybe they might be just stuck at home while I'm off working, but they're just not as actively doing school. And so we have decided we're on track to, like, quote unquote finish the semester pretty much right at like May 15th, which I feel like is normal school times, but we're going to go ahead and just keep on going. And I just think that will let us have a little bit more of that flexibility we
Mhm.
want throughout the quote unquote school year, and be able to add in some other things that we want to do. My oldest has gotten really into like sewing and crocheting. And so she's mentioned she'd like to do more of that. And I'm like, that's great. But then we need to like figure out a way where we can spread our year out throughout the entire year, not take 3 months off for summer.
Yeah.
And that would give you more time then throughout the rest of the year to do things. And so I also think I'm realizing, like, our school year doesn't have to look like the conventional 2 semester school year, and that we can make it work for us how we need to. And that, again, it's like that entire like unschooling in your brain of what it has to look like. Like, it what we do probably doesn't look like what a lot of people think it should look like, but it's working for us and how we're
Mhm.
doing it. And so we're kind of adapting and changing, in this first year as to how we're going into things.
I love it. So, one of the things that obviously they get at school, and especially being in a rural community, is that, socialization. What kind of things are you guys doing as far as keeping that socialization still a thing within their daily schedule?
Yeah, I have like two trains of thoughts on this. The one is, I mean, they have each other and we take them out regularly. We go, out to eat, and we travel. They travel with me extensively. And obviously interacting with people. I do try to make an effort for them to get together. We have a ton of cousins, a lot of really close friends. If we have a cousin who has a basketball game, like, I try to make the effort to be like, okay, we're going. That way, you guys can see people and hang out with people. They are involved in those extracurricular activities like piano, and then they both do gymnastics and ballet, where they obviously hang out with kids. And then a part of me is like, maybe they have social interactions in other ways. They recently actually traveled with my parents out of the country. I was at work, I had multiple work conferences scheduled back to back. And so they went out of the country with my parents. And my mom came back saying that the thing she kept hearing is how well behaved they were and how polite they were and how they could carry conversations with adults. And trust me, my kids are not perfect. This is not what I'm trying to say. I was like, there's plenty of times that we are not well behaved. But I will say, like, I think they adapt really well and just have social interactions in other ways. I feel like it's something always running in the back of my mind. So again, I try to think about that and incorporate things, but I've also, just let that piece of like quote unquote socializing go because I don't know if you follow Laura Farms on Instagram, but I met her in real life about probably 6 months ago. Anyway, the sweetest girl, so nice, so social, so all the things you think of. And I had no idea she was homeschooled. And
Oh.
I was like, oh, it was like that friendly reminder that like
Mhm.
just because you're homeschooled doesn't mean you can't be perfectly well adapted. I mean, she probably doesn't even know that it had an impact on me at all meeting her, but it was a friendly little reminder that like again, just because we think like we put ourselves in a box, we put our kids in a box of like this is how it has to be, it doesn't necessarily mean that's how it has to look.
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, I've known a lot of people growing up. I knew a lot of people that were homeschooled. I know some people now that are homeschooling their children, and I definitely agree with that. I just kind of wanted to get your opinion on it. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely.
And I feel the whole when the kids go out with somebody else and you get compliments on their behavior, and then at home you're just like, "Do you have any manners?"
I
And
know.
then
I
you're
know.
just like, "Okay, I need to remember I'm mom. As long
Yep,
as they're being good out in the real world, that is what matters." You got to take
absolutely.
the brunt of it as long as they're not little brats out in public and to other people. Yes, I sometimes I have to sit back and I'm like, as long as they are well behaved for other people, just remember they need to be well behaved. You're doing it right.
I
So
know. It's kind of like, coaching that you have practice where you're like, oh, you could have thrown, let's tweak this, how you're throwing the ball or how you're catching, or, you're tweaking things. And then when they do the game and they like just show up and they do all the things you've been teaching, you're like, yes, and then you go back to
it's
practice
sunk
the next
in.
week. And you're like, oh, we still have other things we got to practice. I feel like that's how parenting is, that that at home is where they, are still learning and adapting and, figuring things out. And then it is always nice when you hear from people that they're well behaved out in public.
And the fact that you're mom and they're more comfortable around you, so they just don't care sometimes.
Yeah, that's very true.
That too. So, what advice would you give to other rural moms that are considering homeschooling their kids, but they're hesitant, based upon all the challenges that we've talked about?
Yeah, I think if you're like curious about it, I would definitely get more curious first. Like I was not an overnight decision for my husband and I to move to homeschooling. I looked at, what if we went to, we have some other schools in our area. Like what if we, were able to go to a different school or change the, like I just tried to explore all of our options. I also, looked into, we are not a part of a homeschool co-op, but again, I think if I didn't have my mom, that'd be something I would very much seriously look into. Like how could I do this with other people and split work, or one of us be in charge of math and one of us be in charge of science and all those things. Look into the curriculums. I've been really impressed with the curriculum we use. I actually signed my girls up last year with a different curriculum. We got 2 weeks in and I was like, no, this is not the curriculum for us. This is not what I wanted. This is not what I envisioned. And then, I reached out to Jessica and got some help. And so I wish I had done that before, though. I wish that it was something I had, like, I was so set on one curriculum, but I wish I'd gotten like someone that had been doing it for a while. What is your opinion of these different curriculums? What do you think? And do you want a curriculum that there is curriculums that are very much online, and there's curriculums that are hybrids, and there's curriculums that are old fashioned books, right? Like
Yeah.
you can look into all of those types of things. And I think probably depending on your kid's age level would also, I think I could see us moving to more of a hybrid where some of it is more online and some of it's books as my oldest gets older, but that just didn't make sense for a kindergartner and third grader, in my opinion, and where we're at. So just get really curious and start looking into it and thinking about it, thinking about how much time are you spending doing pickup and drop off and all of those things and packing lunches. Like when I got very serious about it, I was like, there is more, if we remove those hours from the day, like those are hours that could go towards homeschooling. And then being real with myself that it was like, is this truly am I committed to this enough to give up other, things that are, important to me and that I like to do? And so I think that's kind of, some of my advice. Talk to other homeschool moms. I've talked with so many people. I had someone recently reach out to me and we ended up voice memoing each other back and forth for like, a few hours of just like what it looks like. And then letting go of expectations. Everyone's homeschool journey looks different. Everyone's school journey looks different. Like you've got to know your kids, what they're interested. I told my girls from the beginning, every year in May, I'll ask them, do you want to do this next year or do you not? And then once we're committed to the year, we're committed to the year. They can't change their mind. But if my oldest daughter came back next year and said, I think I want to go back to school, I would definitely consider it if that's where, if we all agreed as a family. And she expressed interest. I think my youngest, I would make her hold out a little long. I'd be like, you're not quite old enough to be the one to make that decision. But again, that's like child dependent. But yeah, I would just encourage you to get very curious about it. Have conversations with your spouse, have conversations with your kids, and see where they're at as well. Because again, it's not all on me. They have to make the decision to show up and be homeschool and be a part of it. My husband has to, I have to, like, it's all of us choosing to do that.
Definitely. So, what is one of the most rewarding moments that you've had homeschooling thus far? Like one of those moments where you're just like, wow, I'm so happy that I'm doing this, or something that one of the girls does that you're just like, that's amazing.
It's really rewarding when they get something that you've been trying to teach them and you're like, yes, like we did it. Like we got it done together, like that those moments I feel like happen, are sprinkled throughout the year so far of just you're like, yes, we're getting these concepts and we're totally getting it. But I would say the time I have traveled for work my entire career, even before I was on social media and speaking, the company I worked for was 3 hours away and I would regularly travel there. So being away from my kids in my home has always been a part of my life and just my career. And I am finding how much I love to be with them and finding whether it's at home or just be with them if we're doing something. And that has been so rewarding. I have no more mom guilt about working at all because I spend so much time with them. And you can say it's teaching, but it really is quality time a lot of times, like what we're doing and what we're reading and we're talking about things together. Like I feel like we've become such more integral part of each other's lives. Like they no longer leave me for 8 hours a day and then come back to me. That we are always overlapping and doing things. They're up in my office when I'm working. Like we're just, I feel like we're more close knit than we've ever been. Like, and that's extremely rewarding, which is and that's really at the core of what I wanted when I started homeschooling. And so that is extremely, I don't know, satisfying. It makes it all worth it when there's times that I'm like, why did we do this? What did we sign up for? And I remember those moments and like kind of cling to them to keep me grounded in like our mission of why we're doing this.
I love that. That's very good advice. And definitely, even just being a mom, that's such good advice. Like you have to remember those good moments because, like we said in the beginning of the episode, sometimes being a mom, especially with a lot of things going on, it can be chaotic. And
Yeah.
grounding yourself with those moments of like that quality time together, or when something exciting happens and you get to share it with them, that definitely makes it all worth it. Seeing them do things that they couldn't do before.
Yeah.
Definitely special times in their childhood and in your motherhood. So I really love that. So I guess looking ahead, what are your hopes and goals for homeschooling? I know you touched a little bit upon you're looking to maybe do it year round in just to help make those travel schedules a little bit easier and less pressure on getting the curriculum done. But do you have any like specific goals or anything coming up as far as that goes?
Yeah, I would like to diversify our homeschooling more. I feel like this first year I was so focused on like they have to have math, they have to have language arts, they have to have science, they have to have history. And I expressed like my daughter's interest in like sewing and crocheting and she has some other things. Like I feel like next year as I'm getting more confident and as my youngest is as my youngest is getting older, and my oldest is getting older too. I'm excited for maybe being like, oh, we have this hour in the afternoon where you could really explore an interest that you have. They've
Mhm.
both our entire family has expressed a ton of interest in learning Spanish. We obviously live in New Mexico,
Yeah.
where Spanish is pretty heavily spoken. So like that, like how can we incorporate some other things outside of maybe traditional school that are important to us? And so I feel like I'm building my confidence. I just this year I was like, do not try to do it all. Do not try to take on, get the core subjects in this year. And now next year I'm like, okay, I'm feeling more confident. They're feeling more confident. There's more independent work where I could help one of them do something more specialized. Excuse me.
You're
And
good.
I would love yeah, I love to explore that a little bit more of what are some other things we can add to our day and that yeah, just are outside of our normal 4 subject classes.
Awesome. I really appreciate this conversation on homeschooling and basically figuring out how to do it as a busy mom. So now we get to the exciting part of the episode of I just like to have fun and get some rapid fire questions in to help people get to know you and just to have fun. So
Sounds great.
what's your go-to book? If you have to pick up a book that you've read before, what's your go-to?
Oh my gosh. Okay, this is not like an educational book. This is
Just any book. It can be any book.
so I'm actually currently rereading ACOTAR, so A Court of Thorns and Roses, like
Okay.
the book talk viral book that's going around. I am rereading that one. And I feel like I've always loved to read. I devour books. Like I cannot get my hands on enough. But for a few years, probably in like 2020, 2021, 2022, I very much transitioned to like self-help books, reading about business, and that was all I read. And I was so burnt out. I feel like by the end of 2022, I would not even pick up a book. And then I found actually the ACOTAR series, Court of Thorns and Roses. Sorry, I keep using the acronym. And it just ignited my love of reading again and made me realize like there can be a healthy balance between reading those business books that are helping you, grow your business and or self-help books or whatever it may be, and reading for fun. And so just trying to find that balance with my books.
Yes, I feel like it's funny some of the similarities that we have because I definitely did about the same thing.
Yeah.
And now I'm just like, I don't want to read something where I have to actually learn something. I need to like step back when I read and I want to like go to a different time. So personally, I love reading like 1800s novels because it's so different from current life that
Yes.
it just separates all that stress and lets me just completely dive out of 2024 and into a different century and a different location. And yeah, I love
I
light novels where nothing stresses me out. Everything's going to end well. Like it's all good.
I went through a phase where I was very into historical fictions that were like kind of history, but like very much fictional.
Yes.
And I also have found I get a lot of my like quote unquote business building self help from podcasts now. And I'm like,
Mhm.
just let reading be a place where I get to relax. Like I will absolutely turn on a 45-minute podcast in the car and listen and be taking notes and reading and, like absorbing things from it. But I like to just, yeah, crack open a good book that's for relaxing.
I, I'm right there with you. That's exactly what I do. When you're in the car, you can learn. When I'm sitting, when I take a bath at night and it's like
Yes.
my quiet time, I don't want to read about how I can make myself better. I just want to escape sometimes. And it's the old Calgon take me away. Like just
Absolutely.
get me out of here. So if you could visit any place in the world right now, where would you go?
Oh my gosh. Oh, that's so hard. Okay, I have one. I want to visit like so many places. I love to travel. That is one thing about me. That is something it's my husband is a dairy farmer. We are very much tied to cows. And I'm like, please just let my wandering spirit wander wherever I want around the world and the country. Probably a big actually driver for homeschooling is being able to just, like I said, travel
Mhm.
with my kids. But right now I have heard, and this was on Instagram, so like take it with a grain of salt, but the Northern Lights are supposed to be really good this year. So I would love to go to Iceland, which is really out of my comfort zone because I hate cold weather. I hate anything cold. I'd rather be on a beach, but I would love to see the Northern Lights in Iceland and go and do the whole Iceland experience. So that's pretty high on my list. I don't think it's going to happen for me, but it is wishful
Well,
thinking.
here's the deal, and you've heard it here on the Dairy Hour podcast. I'm 99.9% sure that we are going to Iceland and Scotland in the spring.
Oh my gosh. You'll have to tell me
So,
how it is. I got to hear
or
about
just
it.
come along. I mean, that's
Okay. Pack me in a suitcase. I'm small. I'll fit.
And our kids will all get along famously, seeing as they're all similar age. So we could just,
Yes.
yeah,
I would love that.
we'll just go crazy. So
Oh my gosh.
yeah,
No,
no,
you
that's one
really
of
will
those
have to tell
things.
me everything about it.
The Northern Lights is one of those things that I am sorry, refrigerator. I don't know. I don't know what is going on with that thing. It's a brand new refrigerator and like the alarm just randomly goes off and I need to read the
I
booklet.
can't hear it.
Oh, perfect. It's a very obnoxious buzzer. And I was like, oh my gosh, please don't
That's
go
so
off.
crazy.
Did it. But anywho, so yes, the Northern Lights are on my bucket list too. So I will keep you in the loop. Your go-to comfort food.
Oh my gosh, I have too many. I am like a sweets junkie, but we just talked about this on the podcast, so it's fresh on my mind. I'm doing like a challenge with Natalie, my co-host right now. It's like a diet, workout, like a whole thing. It's not just about like working out and dieting. That makes it sound very surface level. But anyway, one of the things is I gave up fast food. And so, oh
Oh my
man,
gosh.
I love me some fast food. I get it. I know it's so gross for so many people, but I love it and I don't care.
I have to have the right hanker. I do. I'll get in these like moods for it. And I'm just like, I just want a double cheeseburger for McDonald's.
It just hits sometimes. Like
Yes.
there's just no way around it.
Thank you. Yes. It's like the salt. Like if you have a headache or something, like it's something with the salt in it. And you're just like,
Yeah.
yeah. And of course,
It cures a lot of things, I feel
cheese,
like.
cheese and pickles. And it's just, it's right. It's
Yeah.
all that's right in the world. I feel that. You're good. You're safe. You're safe with me. I feel that.
Thanks.
Um, all right, I'm gonna throw you a real hard ball. What is the weirdest talent that you have?
Oh, I feel like I'm like not talented. I don't know. Oh my gosh. I mean, I can think of like such random ones. Like I can lick my elbow, like stupid,
Oh,
silly ones from like high
that's a
school,
hey, that's a
but
good one.
okay.
It's like a party
Um,
trick.
that yeah, I can only think of party tricks. That's exactly the word I was looking for. As far as
Perfect.
actual talents, what I'm good at.
Hey,
Um,
you can be talented at licking your elbow. That's fine because I can't do it. So that is a very good talent today.
I can still, I almost the last time I did it, I almost threw my back out, I think, but I can still do a scorpion. I don't know if you know that is where you grab your foot and like swing it all the way around like the
Oh,
back of your head.
oh, ow. That
My
just
oldest brother was like, there's no way you can still do that. Like you're 35,
oh,
you
and
can't do that.
then you had to prove him wrong.
Had to prove him wrong.
Yep.
I technically haven't done one since, and that was probably like 6 months ago. But I did it. I did it. So
I
that's my
learned my
talent.
lesson. Wait till I'm 36 and then I'll do it again so I can show you at 36 I can still do it.
Yeah. So
I might
apparently
back
all
out.
my talents are being like I like contortionist. I know that's all I have.
Hey, that's a great weird talent. You can run with that. And the
I can't
last,
imagine what other people say. I'm like other people probably like I can read 1,000 words a minute or like something that's actually useful.
I don't know if I've ever asked that question before,
Oh,
so
okay, good.
you're good. And if you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Oh, teleporting for sure, without a
That would
doubt.
be a fun one. Travel
Oh my
days.
gosh, I would love to be able to just be like, oh, I want to see the Northern Lights. Boom,
Yep,
I can see them. That's what I want.
that would be nice. Yes,
Yeah,
that's
it
a good
really
one.
would.
So and the final question, I guess you could say, I have my previous guests leave a question for a guest in the future. So it's just like a broad question. So your question is, what is the one, if you could be remembered for one thing, what would it be?
Oh my gosh,
I'm
that's
here with all
deep.
the hard hitting questions
I
today.
know. I'm like, gosh, it's only 11 a.m. here. Like this, I'm not ready for this yet. If I could be remembered for one thing, I'm gonna say like having an impact. Like I'm gonna go. I'm not gonna get into family. I'm not gonna get in like legacy with my kids. I'll get into work. Over the years of sharing about agriculture on social media, I have realized as a kid who left home at 18 and went away to college and said, I'm never coming back to the farm. I have such a deep rooted passion for sharing about agriculture. I think agriculture is fascinating. Like the word discover ag, like our name of our podcast is literally to go out and discover where your food comes from, the people behind your food. And so I feel like if I could be remembered for one thing, it would be like having an impact of bringing people to agriculture, people from outside. I want them to see agriculture. I want them to discover agriculture. I think it's cool and neat. And so just that I could bring that to fruition, that people truly, genuinely have their minds and hearts opened up to what it is that we all do in agriculture, and have an appreciation for it at the end. So having an impact in that space for me, professionally, would be just everything. I think I would just, it's really at the core, I feel like, of what drives me every day to do the job I do is bringing that to people, bringing agriculture to people in a new and unique way.
I love it. That's a good one.
Thank you.
And do you have one piece of advice to leave for listeners? Something, a quote that drives you, a motto that just really resonates with you?
Yes, so I do. I have a favorite quote. I've shared this before if you've heard me on a podcast, so I apologize, but it is my favorite. It is from Coach Carter. I don't even know if I've ever watched this movie, but I heard this quote and I will never forget it. So it's, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that frightens us most. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightening about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. It continues on from there. But I just think it's a really powerful reminder that we all have something special. And like, you hiding your light doesn't make someone else's light brighter. You know, you can be as bright and as big and, you know, impactful as you want to be. And it doesn't take away from anyone else in any way. And so I don't know, for some reason, the first time I heard that, it was like life changing for me and stuck with me ever since.
I that's a really great quote, and I have heard you say that before. It definitely resonates when you really sit down and think about how deep it really is. It is very fascinating and very inspiring.
Yeah,
So
the part about children too, you just when you like it reminds you of that spark that children have, that they just are, they don't care what people think of them. They're just truly authentically themselves. And when they laugh so deep and so hard, and they're not worried about, you know, am I gonna look stupid doing this? Or I just, in so many levels, like I love how the whoever wrote it brought it back to the children aspect, because it is just a reminder to have that, like, I don't know, that genuine authenticity. And I know authenticity is such an overused word now, but that you aren't worried about what other people think, and you can just be truly who you are.
awesome. Tara, do you want to share, if people want to follow your journey, where they can find you?
Yeah, sure. So if you are a podcast person, which I'm guessing you might be if you are on listening to this podcast, but you can listen to us over on Discover Ag. You can find us anywhere, you know, you get your podcast. And then over on social, you can find me on Instagram at Tara Vander Dussen.
Awesome. Tara, thank you so very, very much for coming on and talking about your homeschool experiences. I had a blast chatting with you, and it's always fun. So have a wonderful day, everybody.